NA New England chapter for this event this evening. So I'm Ashley Peterson. I'm a research and instruction librarian at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And I'm also the president of the ARLIS NA New England chapter. I'll be moderating this event tonight, the presentations and the Q&A session that will follow. I also have a co-moderator, Amber Welch. She is responsible for administering the technology that's making this webinar possible. Amber is a librarian and instructional technology consultant at Mount Holyoke College and is also the ARLIS New England chapter secretary. So the New England Chapter Board hopes that this virtual snapshot of the art librarianship and visual resources profession will be interesting and enlightening for everyone, from seasoned professionals to the newly art library curious. And our goal in putting together this webinar is really twofold. So we wanted to provide an opportunity for those in the art library and VR professions a chance to share their work for no cost, most importantly, and that's a way that's relatively simple and also can reach a wider audience than would be possible at a location-based conference. And we also hope to give a snapshot of the kind of work that art librarians are doing right now, and hopefully a sense of future directions for the profession. So we have 4 panelists from throughout the US who have generously offered their time this evening, and they'll be talking about their work. So their topics range from visual resource management to information literacy instruction to special collections to innovative ways to reach out to the community. And we really feel like this represents a diverse array of the work that's happening in the field right now. So a word about the event schedule. Each presentation, as I said, there are 4 of them, and they will be no longer than 10 minutes each. And there will be about 20 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So the event officially ends at 8:45 p.m., but we do have the webinar space until 9 p.m., so we encourage people to linger and maybe chat and mingle a little bit after the official event has ended. And just a word about the Q&A logistics. So we ask that you use the chat feature. That should be a button at the bottom of your screen that will enable that. And please do indicate which speaker the question is intended for when you submit it. And also a note that these questions will be moderated, so the panelists won't be responding directly via chat, but I'll be asking the questions via video during the Q&A session, and the panelists will answer by video. But following the event at 8:45, you might want to stay and you can chat directly with the panelists if you have any further questions. So we're going to kick off this evening with a presentation from Jessie Buell. She will be speaking about information and visual literacy instruction tools. So Jessie, a little bit about her, is the instructional design and web librarian for Colgate University. She acts as a liaison to the art and art history department, in addition to romance languages, Jewish studies, English and theater, and women's studies. She holds a BA from Cornell University in English and Fine Arts and an MLIS from Pratt Institute with advanced certification in archives and museum libraries. For questions about her presentation, Jessie encourages you to get in touch with her at jbuell@colgate.edu. So Jessie, take us away.
Okay. Does everyone see my screen? I hope so. I'm not hearing anything, so I'm gonna assume it's okay. So like Ashley said, my name is Jessie Buell. I work at Colgate University in upstate New York. I'm the instructional design and web librarian. Our library has been proactive in developing blended learning initiatives to support our faculty and students. And this presentation will introduce you to one tool that we've created. We call them digital learning objects, or DLOs for short. So one of the main problems that librarians attempt to address through blended learning is the issue of the amount of time that we're given to introduce students to all facets of information literacy. So at Colgate, we do not have required library courses or any required library time at all. But we do have a very active information literacy program in which all research and instruction librarians participate. So I teach about 25 classes a semester. However, I usually only get to see the same class once or twice. And often professors want me to cover large, complex topics in 50 minutes. Like, for example, last week I did teach a geography class, the basics of visual literacy. So I'm faced with a bunch of students that don't know the basic principles, and I'm supposed to cover something as complex as we all know visual literacy can be. So it's difficult. So we created DLOs to help mitigate some time management issues, as well as provide those interested with opportunities for self-learning at their own speed. So what is a DLO? I wanted to make something different than the talking head videos or the online tutorials we're used to, because I've seen and read a lot of studies that they're not effective as they could be. So we at Colgate wanted to distinguish our DLOs by mandating that they have 4 of the following characteristics, each one of them. So the first one is DLOs have to be interactive. They have to engage students with information literacy materials and learning research skills, but that they require student engagement to continue the tutorial at some point, at least at some point. So you can't progress without physical students clicking on something or entering information. That's what we mean by interactivity. The DLOs have to engage multiple literacies, and obviously it's a visual medium, so this one's taken care of off the bat, but it's the way that you develop the visuals that are really important. Spatial, virtual, all of those literacies are really things to be cognizant of when you're developing these DLOs. It's just engaging multiple literacies is another form of interaction, and theoretically it provides more interest and will hold the viewer longer. So DLOs are also great because they accommodate for different learning styles and abilities. They can include audio. We always include scripts for text readers. You could add subtitles. There are opportunities to accommodate these tools many different ways for differently abled learners. And lastly, but probably most importantly, DLOs must provide incentive. So a student leaves each of our modules with a tangible result. An incentive cannot be ephemeral, like having learned something. It has to be more concrete. So for example, in our Unlocking Keywords DLO, which helps students develop and come up with different keywords, students type in keywords they come up with, and at the end they automatically can search the catalog with the work that they've input, or they can email the list of keywords they generated to themselves, their professor, whomever. It's a result or reward of completing the DLO. This incentive can also benefit professors, since these emails or printouts can provide more opportunities for assessment as well. Okay. So here is a little short video I put together. It shows 2 of the different DLOs that we've done. Just want to make sure the volume's off. These both have audio, but the screen recording didn't capture them very well, so I apologize for that. This one is a DLO I made in conjunction with our archivists down in Special Collections and University Archives. They were having a problem with their time in that people come down and want to work with the materials, but they had to spend 20 or so minutes going over all the rules in order to utilize the materials down there, since they're so specialized. So this tutorial walks them through all of that stuff that they'd usually cover, and it really gives them back 20 minutes of their 50-minute class. So they really see it as invaluable. This, I just wanted to provide, shows you a little bit of the interactivity. So I animated George Bernard Shaw, you saw it there. Over here, this is one of the different quizzes that you can put in, and you can see the interactivity. It really forces the student to engage and really think about the question before they can proceed. You can also set this up to grade. We don't have any of them grade them. They automatically pass even if they get things wrong. But you can have it grade, and they cannot proceed unless they hit a certain mark. This DLO is our Academic Honesty DLO. We made this in conjunction with the Dean of Incoming first years. so that all incoming freshmen are exposed to this in the hopes that they understand the academic honor code. At the end, so it walks you through a quiz on the different types of academic honesty, and then at the end you can submit a signature to the dean as well as to our records, and hundreds and hundreds of people have used this. We try to provide like glossary and resources on the side, as well as plenty of opportunity to consult more information. This is another example of a different quiz you can have. Again, it's just more interactivity in terms of having someone actually drag and drop. And these are pictures of actual students just to add more interest as well. Okay, so those are my examples. So technologies used. I have a background in design, graphic and web, as well as pedagogy from my graduate school. I think both are essential for the creation of good online learning materials. I've seen so many digital tools produced by libraries that just fall short of being successful because of poor design choices, basically. In addition to that, you can see I've listed here the different technologies that I've used. The primary software that we use to create our DLOs is called Articulate Storyline. We use the second version, even though, to be honest, I preferred the first version. I have Edit Video and Final Cut Pro. Dreamweaver is how we put the final product. It's a story file. We put that online. Google Analytics we use for assessment purposes. And lastly, Photoshop. You can use Camtasia. There's really no end of tools at your disposal, but these are the ones specifically that we use. So the different steps to designing a DLO. We had to create a process document, and this goes really thoroughly into how we create them. The first step is the most arduous, it's planning. You need to organize all the material to cover with a goal of covering all of this material within 10 to 15 minutes. We try not to make DLOs longer than 10 to 15 minutes. Just based on best practices of research we've done in this field. So this includes, the work for planning includes writing out the script, finding and or editing images, backgrounds, videos, audio. You storyboard each slide of the DLO, and you create a list of supplemental resources, including the PDF of the script for accessibility reasons. All of this work involves a lot of collaboration between the instructional designer and all stakeholders. Second is the actual creation, where you put everything together. This includes recording any voiceover or editing the background music. This is usually at the point at Colgate where I show the DLO to library faculty and all stakeholders for feedback, and then redesign based on their feedback. As we all know, design is an iterative process. Then you implement the project after all parties are satisfied. This is where we add Google Analytics and the HTML for assessment purposes. Our DLOs live on our website in our beginning research page, which is designed for first years and those seeking beginner research tools and advice. And lastly, assessment. Before I became a librarian, I was a UX designer, user experience. So I often do UX testings on the groups of students. And again, this requires reworking usually as well, because you get more information from students. I also periodically check and report DLO Google Analytics to see what you're performing and what you're lacking. And it really helps us guide our marketing of these tools, which is a whole nother element that I do participate in, but rely on the help of my colleagues to get the word that these exist out to the larger faculty. body. Okay, so that's it. The next DLO I'm working on is a visual literacy one. I've worked with a group for New York 6, and we've done collaborative DLOs before. We did an annotated bibliography DLO. So it's definitely a collaborative process. If anyone's interested, please feel free to contact me. And if you want to see examples of the other ones that I've created, they're listed here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jessie. So before we get to the next presenter, I want to point out that you can submit questions via chat, but you can also submit them via Twitter. This is the hashtag for the event. It's ARLIS NE chat. So you can go ahead and do that. So next we are going to get to Jasmine Burns. So Jasmine will be presenting on visual resource collection management. And Jasmine is the Image Technologies and Visual Literacy Librarian in the Fine Arts Library at Indiana University, Bloomington, where she manages the interdisciplinary image collections for teaching and research and provides library instruction in visual and information literacy. Jasmine received an MA in Art History from Binghamton University in 2013 and an MLIS from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in May 2015. Over the past 5 years, Jasmine has worked as an assistant curator of visual resources, a museum educator, a digitization assistant, and a junior fellow at the Library of Congress. She is currently serving as the secretary of the executive board of the Visual Resources Association and is the job posting liaison for the ARLIS blog. So let's hear from Jasmine.
Alrighty. I hope everyone can hear me. Let's see, share screen. There we go. Oh, that's not the beginning. There it is. All right, hi everyone. I'm Jasmine. I'm the Image Technologies and Visual Literacy Librarian. I just started this position in August after finishing my MLIS in Wisconsin. Upon my arrival to IUB, I inherited an image collection. It's both physical and digital. That had been abandoned since my predecessor's retirement in 2011. It used to be the slide library, and then she weeded out most of the slides, and what's left is the remainder of slides, which I'm not really sure what to do with just yet, and the digital collection. So the majority of the issues with the existing collection are surrounding our homegrown institutional repository, which is called DIDO, Digital Images Delivered Online. This IR was developed in 1995, and it looks exactly the same. It hasn't changed at all since then. And it serves primarily as an online hosting space for the images that support instruction and research, mainly in the field of art history. So there are 76,000 images in DIDO, and over the past 20 years, they've all been scanned at various levels and at various resolutions. The master files, I don't really know. They're stored on magnetic tape somewhere in the IU system, and that's all I know. But all I know is I have access to about 53,000 of them. The other 23,000 files are a complete mystery. The entire collection is cataloged in VCAT. VCAT is used in Visual Resources. It's a FileMaker Pro database. That was actually developed locally in Bloomington. And I use the term cataloged very loosely in this context. The database was revamped and entirely customized. So this customization essentially flattened all of the metadata fields and rendered it a non-relational database. So due to the nature of this highly customized database and cataloging workflow, there were no metadata standards used in the cataloging of these 76,000 images. Because it was cataloged specifically for DIDO, and I realize now that I should have put a screenshot up of what DIDO looks like, it's kind of just a line of text, and the flat files match up with kind of the order of the line of text. There are authority files in Dido that come from the Getty, but they're just not linked to any of the work records at all, which was a little strange. And because of the customized nature of really the entire project, the IR and the catalog system, and because of its long lifespan, over 20 years it was built, there were so many people contributing to the cataloging and scanning of the project that without any recognizable standards in place, it's really kind of difficult for me to navigate at this point. So here's a screenshot of what the messy metadata, in my words, what it looks like. So you can kind of see, this is just to give you a snapshot of an idea of how inconsistent some of the data is. So if you look to the far left, you've got the accession numbers, and then the next field, I'm not really sure, maybe it's a location, sometimes it's a date. And then if you look kind of straight in the middle where it says IU index at the top, and we see all those Mexico fields, and that's really all I get is Mexico, man with piñatas on yoke. I don't have a date, I don't have a cultural context, I don't have any context. So that's kind of all I have is an image and these captions at really varying degrees of cataloging. So when I was hired, this was my kind of priority project, and the libraries at IU have been talking about what to do with Dido. As I mentioned, my predecessor retired in 2011. So there was kind of some talk about taking it down. There's some talk about just leaving it up. But because of the low usage, our libraries follow the stats for the usage for many of our pages. And there were maybe 40 people that used it in the past 6 months. And my coworker said that it was probably all her when she got here, trying to figure out what to do with it. So it's really very few people are using it at all. And because of that, I'm not going to migrate everything, but I am going to migrate everything that I can migrate. So I'm not going to migrate all 76,000 images, mainly because I only have access to 53,000 of the master files. Some of them are they're just not there. Most of them, actually, a lot of them have insufficient metadata. So I don't even have enough information to make the records usable. Many of them have a number of quality issues. So either quality issues with the scans because they started scanning them in 1995. Some of them are as low as 72 DPI, and I think they go up not much further than that. So they're pretty low quality scans, and also a lot of it is copy stand and original photography. So there's some quality issues with the actual images as well. And a lot of them actually are just available elsewhere because Dido hasn't been touched in 4 years. Nothing's been added or taken down. Most of everything that's on there has been added to ArtStore anyways, or museums are becoming so open with their collections that they're putting them online and making them accessible. So there's a lot of duplication there, and I don't want to offer somebody a lower quality image if I can help them find a better one somewhere else. So my overall weeding project my process is fairly straightforward. First, I'm going to eliminate the records without enough metadata, as I mentioned. I'll probably put these away in a rainy day fund for a grad student research project or something like that. I'm not going to delete them, but I don't want to take the time to have to do the research for them right away. Then I'm going to compare the remaining works to our ArtStore collections and the kind of larger digital library that ArtStore that we subscribe to. And finally, I'm going to weed out all the low quality images. And this I can do either by their file size, which is kind of easy. I can just sort them by file size, or I might actually have to go through and look. And one of my amazing graduate students is doing that right now. She's actually comparing the images to the images on ArtStore. So that's a tedious process, but sometimes it's really necessary. And the only exceptions to these kind of weeding rules are that We have a really strong collection of African art. Our department has a long institutional history with African art, and I plan to treat these as unique images. I don't know if we have the backup slides for those, so I want to keep the original, the images that we have of them, because they're going to need special attention later on. So finally, when it comes down to all of the weeding, I expect to have about 35,000 images remaining. So what am I going to do with those 35,000 images? Because of the lack of standards from the first VCAT catalog that I have, and the highly customized cataloging fields, I anticipate having to re-catalog all 35,000 of those images. So with the help of some excellent students that I have now, and hopefully I'll get some more in the coming years to help me with that project. And then the goal eventually is to upload them to shared shelf, which once they're recatalogued, doing that in batches is probably going to be pretty straightforward. Ideally, I'd like to be out of the weeding stages by the end of this semester. And I estimate probably about 1 to 2 years to complete the cleaning and the cataloging of the remaining records that I have. So I'd really like to have the collection uploaded to shared shelf before my 3-year review, fingers crossed, which comes up in 2018. So y'all can wish me luck for that. And that's all I've got. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Jasmine. I wanted to give a quick hello and thank you to people watching us live right now at IU Bloomington. We just saw a picture on Twitter that that's happening, so thanks guys, and thanks for the shout out. So our next panelist is Sarah Carter, and she will be talking to us about creative outreach and programming. So Sarah has been a member of ARLIS NA since 2004 and was a founding member of the ARLIS Snap group and blog. Since then, she has served as chair of the mentoring subcommittee and as education liaison to the ARLIS NA executive board. Sarah is currently the director of Bridwell Art Library at the University of Louisville. She received her MLS and MA in art history from Indiana University in 2007. Okay, Sarah, take us away.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to talk to you tonight about a social media project that we implemented earlier this spring. As a little bit of background, Bridwell Art Library is an art, design, and architectural history branch library embedded in the University of Louisville's Fine Arts Department on the main campus. We very closely serve the needs of our art department faculty as students, as well as the campus community, but we're not very well known across the city. So we have a staff of 3 full-time employees, including myself, and we typically serve 100 to 200 patrons each day. So I'm going to talk about my experience using Facebook to promote exhibits and engage our users as well as the wider community. So I've been at this job for 18 months, and I was very fortunate that the previous librarians had a history of running exhibits in our small exhibit cases. And as the new director, I wanted to see if I could kind of push the envelope and continue the exhibits, but then also pair them with the newly created social media accounts for our branch library. So in January 2014, I worked with 2 student assistants to design an exhibit around materials from our special collections, and these were related to self-portraiture and art history. One of the student workers suggested this title, Selfies in Art History, as a joke, and I agreed. I said, why not? Let's look at the relationship between contemporary selfies and the historical tradition of art history. So my student worker volunteered to put together that exhibit, and then the second student worker did the graphic design work and designed what you're seeing here, which is the Facebook banner for our Facebook page. So that was uploaded and run throughout the entire campaign. So we decided we wanted to run a contest on social media, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we set that up. So in order to participate in the contest, we asked them to submit something called a shelfie. So for those of you who may not be familiar with this term, it refers to a selfie taken in front of a bookshelf, usually highlighting that person's interest or personality. So we actually found that we wanted to define this for our audience in order to get them to participate. So we put up an example of a selfie online. And we also announced that there would be a prize and that you could submit your entry on Facebook or by email. And this actually allowed us to preview any images before they went out on our social media, which was really important. And then we also let people know that we were making printouts of every submission that we received, and we would be posting those in our library. So in order to encourage participation, we had some incentives. First, on the left, you're seeing that we posted that we had a book on Vincent van Gogh's self-portraits. This was actually a donation that was a duplicate in our collection, so it cost us nothing to do that. And then on the right, you see that we have some additional signage created by my graphic design student, and then some customized buttons of artist self-portraits, as well as in front of that, the Selfies in Art History collectible trading cards, which ended up being a wild hit. So those were free for anyone to take when they walked into the library. As soon as we had our contest put together, we had the prize picked out, we cast a really wide net in asking for entries. We sent out emails across the campus network. We also hung signs around campus, those posters you saw earlier. We sent targeted emails to the students in the art department. And then the Office of Communication and Marketing, which is an entire separate department at U of L, they actually wrote us a press release and agreed to make a YouTube video that was posted to their channel. And as a result, we actually got picked up by a couple of news outlets, and one of the local stations came and did a story on us. So I'm going to talk about those in just a moment. But first, I want to show you a few examples of the submissions that we received. Here are 7 of the 14. And you can see there's a really wide variety of photographic styles and interpretation of what a selfie is. So I said we had 14 submissions, and in terms of what I was expecting from our user groups, I thought it would be mostly undergrad students, and you're seeing there was a very wide variety of people who submitted. So that was surprising and really very refreshing to see. So this is a still shot of the YouTube channel with the video. This is the student who actually curated the exhibit for us. And on the left there in those windows are the printed examples of the shelfies. And then the display case is actually below those photos. They're flat display cases, so they're not really represented well in the photo. But this gives you an idea of what we had. This is the local news story that was actually highlighted on WDRB, a local channel. So we really were excited to get to talk about our library and its hidden treasures, and I talked about the link between centuries of artistic self-portraiture and the contemporary topic of shelfies, and of course I invited everyone to participate. And then the surprise twist of the story really comes with the group that we were partnered with in this story for hashtag activism. So it was another group called Preservation Louisville, and their group was encouraging anyone really in the public to take photos of historic buildings around Louisville and hashtag them with hearts, because this was around Valentine's Day this year. And so we watched the news clip where they talked about their social media project, and we decided to participate because our library is actually in a mid-century modern building that's on the historic National Register of Historic Places. So we tweeted this at them and they thanked us. And after our campaign, after they both concluded, I reached out to the director of Preservation Louisville and had a really nice conversation with her, offered to give her a tour of our library and really talk about how we could help her interests and potentially how someday we could potentially become the repository for their archives. In terms of assessment, there were a couple different ways I looked at this. We had 70 likes, and like I said, we're a very small library. So that was a good start, but by the time we ended our campaign, we had 50 additional likes. And I think it's really easy in this day and age of, viral smash hit videos to get caught up in, oh, I need, 1,000 likes or 1 million likes or subscribers. And I think it's all relative. So 50 likes, an increase of 50 likes was really a win in my book. In terms of Facebook analytics, I've got a screen capture here, and this was our most successful post, and it was kind of a roundup of all submissions thus far. It had 768 people reached. We also had 851 views on YouTube from that video that the communication and marketing offices made us. And then 14 photo submissions, which for our first social media contest was really successful. But in the end, I think really the payoff was getting to know that local nonprofit and connecting with them, because they had no idea that we had such, particular local resources about a subject that they were interested in. And last but not least, I want to go over a few key elements of success from our campaign. I think you should carefully design your contest, and it should be interactive and personal to your users. So we work a lot with artists and visual people, so it should be a visual campaign, encouraging something that has some parameters but allows for a broad expression of creativity. Something that focuses on people, because there's a lot of research about images on social media that focus on people are the most successful. And then also some kind of subject material that you want to encourage or highlight or get people thinking about. Partner with any media outlets, whatever that means in your context. You may not work at an institution that has an entire department that could produce a video for you, but you certainly have ways to reach out towards media outlets. If you have a social media policy, which the University of Louisville Libraries did not at that time, but we have developed one in the past 6 months, you should use your social media policy, and in all campaigns moving forward, we are following that. And last but not least, don't forget to respond to your users and really form that relationship with them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So our last presentation of the evening will be from Louise Hall, and she will be speaking about artist book collections. So Louise is the architecture and art librarian at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. In this capacity, she does collection development, library instruction, committee work, and assists community members with research. She is currently participating in an institute-wide task force to consider the future of academic research libraries. In addition to librarianship, Louise has over a decade of experience working in diverse learning environments and in the nonprofit sector. Her own research focuses on spaces of learning and making, the experience of the analog in the digital world, rethinking physical reference collections, and book arts and printmaking in academic library environments. She is also a visual artist and a fiction writer. So, Louise.
Hi, Ashley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am bringing up the rear here, so I will try to tantalize you with my presentation. Let me get this up on the screen. Okay, let's see, desktop. Oh. Okay. Hello. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm going to use my time to talk about a project that I'm working on that explores the building of an artist book collection while also considering what it means to collect. And I'm also not going to show any images of artist books or any video, partially because I think we've all spent the day probably looking at our screens, looking at images and video, and I want to focus on something different. I want to have a conversation, albeit a one-sided one at this juncture, about experimenting in the work that we do. I approach my work as a librarian here at MIT and in general, or anything else that matters to me, art making, as an opportunity to experiment and to take risks. I enjoy work that isn't just about thinking or moving from point A to point B, but something that requires both an intense focus and a need to sort of step back and look around and take the larger view at different points. Things that aren't just about writing or just about sketching or just about making, but they're about generating questions, editing. It's this sort of controlled chaos, and that isn't limited by the parameters of a task or an assignment. And I see all of this as related to collection development, the way that I approach it. For this presentation, I'm using the Immaculate Heart College Art Department rules by Corita Kent from the mid-20th century, because they articulate the way I'm approaching this video project that I will introduce briefly. And as I move through the rules, I'll be explaining the beginning of the idea for this project, its current state, where it's going, and I consider the rules to be guidelines and just a framework for the project overall. So the project began when I started working with our special collection in Roach Library for Architecture and Planning at MIT. The arts are situated within the School of Architecture and Planning here at MIT. So although art isn't in the title of the library, it is the place where much of the visual art and art historical material resides. Most of the contemporary artist books in MIT libraries are housed in Roach Library's special collection, and the collection here focuses on artist books published from the mid-20th century through the present. The artist book collected thus far are intentionally interdisciplinary, and they reflect, support, and challenge our academic community and institutional mission. The books are also collected with other local library collections in mind. Because artist books are very expensive, or can be, and tend not to circulate outside of the library, and you have to make an appointment to come and see them, many local libraries that have much larger collections are another way to engage in a community and to also expand the kinds of artist book resources that we have available to our community. So I've been thinking a lot about how we discover, how we define things, how we articulate our collections. And I was thinking about this in terms of our artist book collection, which is very small. We have less than or roughly 100 books in our collection, which is pretty tiny, but I'm growing that over time, obviously. But I've been thinking about the need to either create some sort of guidelines or create a policy or a collection development policy for artist books. And I decided that creating a collection development policy, a traditional one that's written and that we put on the web or somewhere, isn't necessarily the way that I want to frame the collection. Words are important, obviously, but at this stage of the collection's development, it seemed more important to place it in some sort of organizational, institutional, and regional context in a way that was both visual and dynamic and interesting. I also wanted to think both about how I went about choosing material for our collection and to be able to document those decisions for myself and for anyone in the future who is stewarding this collection as a way to create a policy or guidelines, for lack of a better word. So last year I started working on a research project that explores the thinking, choosing, and learning that happens when we make things. There's a lot of talk everywhere about making, but I'm interested in the process of building a collection, aside from the specific quantitative data that we tend to use when we're thinking about collection development, because I think that the process of making something is similar in many ways to the process of collecting. So in June 2014, I recorded this multi-session process of myself learning how to make a series of books using different bindings and different folding techniques. And we captured about 20 hours of video and then compressed them into a 4-minute time-lapse video. And the idea was that by recording it via video, I would be able to really examine the learning process that's taking place as I make this thing, and the conversations that happen between the objects and between me and other people that I'm working with as I'm putting this thing together. And I wanted to see what kind of information or data I could pull from that. I was doing this experiment in the context of a workshop environment where there were a lot of people doing a lot of different projects related to object making or object sharing. And the learning process was a collaborative one. I had multiple people coming in and out of the area where I was working, offering advice and talking about what I was doing. And as I was working, I was thinking about the artist book collection and what we have here at MIT. And I wanted to find a way to share it that was as interesting as this process that I was going through to make this video about learning how to make an artist book. I was still relatively new to MIT and to the Boston area, and so I had also started at the same time meeting with other art librarians, archivists, curators, and others who work with artist book collections in the area, and I wanted to learn more about their collections. And I decided that I would learn a lot about the focus and direction of both those libraries and their collections, their artist book collections specifically, if I videotaped them talking about books that they choose that they see as representative of the collections that they have in their libraries. So the video project that I've cleverly titled Artists, Books in the Academy, for lack of a better title at the moment, is going to go live on Art Journal Magazine's new online platform, which is called Art Journal Open. And hopefully the first video will go up in spring 2016. I wanted to share the videos in an arts context, not necessarily in a library-centric environment, because I think that collecting is an interesting conversation that deserves as broad a platform as possible. And the current production schedule is slowed down due to my own schedule, and also because there's a pretty steep learning curve for me figuring out the right equipment to use, the right software, and remembering how to use the software, and editing the videos in such a way that they're engaging and short, but get all of the ideas across that get discussed over the time that I'm working with people and meeting with them and learning about their collections. I'm focusing on what it means to build a collection in connection to research and curricular needs, as well as library mission-driven decisions, as well as the things that make us human and that make us librarians and that make us interested in this material. That is never independent from the things that we choose, as neutral as we tend to be. And I chose video because I think it's dynamic. It's a great way to show artist books in motion. It's really hard to see the interest or the interesting particular parts of them in still photographs, and video seems to be a great way to do that. So as I said, we don't have written collection development policies for artist books here at Roche, but we do have books that explore key areas in technology related to printed book form, construction type, interactivity, portability, the connection between research and making, the ways in which art and science methodologies and techniques can inform and influence one another, and the relationship between digital and analog technologies. So the MIT Artist Book Collection is going to continue to respond to and reflect these things and reflect our eclectic and curious and smart community and creative community. And it's going to grow to include additional explorations based on the research that I've done so far, and with getting to know people in the community, both on campus and off, more explorations in experimental bookmaking and printmaking, graphic design, book design, and contemporary print culture. And the 6 books that I choose for our collection and for the video that I make about our collection will reflect the things that we've collected so far and our aspirations for future growth. So the future video recordings, the first video recording took place at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts Library with the very patient and wonderful Darren Murphy, who's the Director of Library Services. And in addition to that video, I'll make 2 additional videos this fall, one with myself and another with Ayaka Letizia, who's this incredibly talented artist who works in our Curation and Preservation Services Department, to talk about boxes and enclosures, because I think how we protect these things is as important as the things themselves. The project is still in its early stages. I hope to complete all the interviews in the spring and early summer of 2016, and the videos will begin to appear on Art Journal website in the spring. If you're interested in any of these or interested in being recorded or talking to me, please get in touch to set up a time. I'm at larise@mit.edu. We'll need at least 2 hours to talk and go through the 6 books that you choose, and I'm happy to meet to just talk about artist books in general, or about collection development, or whatever else seems to come up. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Larise, and thank you again so much to all of our presenters. This has all been terrific, and you guys have given us a lot to think about. I just want to say that this whole event will be recorded and posted online. At a time later on this week, we'll be in touch about that, so you'll know where to go to access the recording if you want to revisit anything. And we'll also be pushing it out to the ARLIS listserv, the VRA listserv, in case there's anyone who wasn't able to attend. So we're officially moving into the question and answer period. I encourage everyone to submit your questions via chat or via Twitter at that ARLISNEchat hashtag. So our first question is going to Jessie. So Jessie, you mentioned that your design background has helped you making these DLOs, and I'm wondering what you would recommend for folks who don't have a design background but want to make things that look nice and are, pleasing to use. Are there any tools for learning as you go, or maybe things to make design easier for non-designers?
Sure. So there are a ton of books out there, obviously. I think also just reaching out to people who have a design background. In terms of like tools, they have those, it can be as simple as like those color wheels that help you have nice corresponding complementary colors and everything. If you have something specific, I can help you. I just know there's a bajillion books out there. Anything in terms of web design, things that go online with like UX and stuff, Krug is like the guy to go to, right? It's Don't Make Me Think is the name of the book. He has the second or possibly third or fourth is out. And he has really good ideas, really basic web, how people read screens. It's like the book to read. I think his name's Krug, K-R-U-G. And if you have any questions or want anything specific, please feel free to email me and I can definitely help you figure out tools that can be helpful as well. That's helpful.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a question also for Jasmine. So what outreach are you planning to do with faculty to help develop your collections? And do you know if the current images connect to current research and curriculum?
Hi. Okay, for the first part, outreach to faculty, I've done as much as I probably can at this point. I've tried to send out emails to them, which I know sounds really lame, like that's all you can do is send out an email. When I first got here, I attended their staff meeting and I asked them specifically if there was anything from Dido that they wanted migrated, stuff that they wanted to keep. And all of them basically just said the African collection for the most unique. So that's what I've kind of done so far. 3 months seems like it's gone by really fast, but I guess it's kind of a lot of time. But I've just kind of been get through like sorry, my dogs are really loud. I've been trying to get through the technical part of it before I approach faculty about kind of adding anything new to the collection. So I do plan on meeting with them, trying to meet with them one-on-one, meeting with the studio department and also with other departments on campus, so anthropology, possibly some of the science departments, to kind of see what their image needs are. My outreach strategy right now is doing a lot of workshops. So I'm teaching 3 workshops in the spring about managing your digital image collections. And what was the other, can you repeat the other second part of the question? I can't even remember what it was.
Yes, so the second part was, if you know if current images connect to current research and curriculum?
Oh, I'm not sure. I know that one of our faculty members whose specialty is East Asian studies is frustrated with the image collections that are available to him, especially Art Store. Art Store does tend to be lacking in that field. I haven't had any specific requests from the other faculty members, so they know where I am, they know what my services are, and I do plan to try and kind of work with them more. There are, I think, 4 faculty who are on sabbatical right now, so that's kind of a big chunk of the department that I haven't even met yet. So it'll come, and I'm hoping that the Dido stuff that does get migrated will be used, or at least used as kind of a historical record of kind of a legacy collection. And so I hope it's. I haven't done much talking to faculty yet about it, but it's the conversations are in the works. So I hope that answers your question.
Sounded good. Thank you. So a question for Sarah. Do you have any sort of tips or best practices for establishing the sorts of partnerships with the community like you did? I know you addressed this a little bit in your presentation. Is there anything you would add just about ways to get started if it seems overwhelming to someone who's never had a program like this before?
Yeah, there was so much just moving to this new location personally and professionally, and then to start to do additional outreach. You know, I was given kind of a list of previous donors and gallery directors and lists to subscribe to. My predecessor had been here for 40 years, so I definitely wanted to follow in her footsteps. But I knew that I'm different person, different interests, and I would probably be striking out on my own. So I think it's just, following what interests you and kind of looking for those little undiscovered niches. There was a really good presentation by, I'm forgetting her name right now, but she was at ARLIS last year, and she talked about using social media to follow different groups when you're in a new city. So I kind of took some of her tips, and that's actually up available off of the ARLIS website. It was, I'm looking at, I'm sorry. Oh, it's by S. Williams, and I don't have her full name, but it's Instagram in Art Librarianship, sharing a snapshot and taking a shot at using Instagram as a new librarian. And so I thought that was really inspiring in terms of just looking at different accounts and understanding what's out there, because there are a lot of people on Instagram that are kind of trendsetters in your area, and that might be a good way to go.
Thank you. So, question for Larice. You mentioned this connection between making and collecting and the ways that you approach sort of following that. And so what was sort of the genesis of this concept? Is it something you encountered, or so how did that come to mind to you? Oh, you're muted, Larice.
I am on fire with this technology tonight. Again, I apologize for leaving my screen up. I thought I got it down. But it was inspired by this beautiful data workshop that I took at Harvard in June of 2014. And when I was doing the workshop, it it was geared toward museum professionals, but I have this philosophy about we have a lot to learn from museums, and they have a lot to learn from libraries, museum folks. So anyway, during this workshop, I was working on that video that I was talking about, the stop motion, the time-lapse video about making. And it was while I was doing that I was meeting other librarians, and I realized that there was this connection. I'd been doing collection development for years, but I never made a connection between making things and collecting things until I was making something while I was actively collecting that same kind of object. And that's sort of where it started and kind of went off in its own special direction.
Thank you. So another question for Jessie. So have you had any issues meeting accessibility needs, or are there any sort of plans in place for that sort of thing with the DLOs?
So I haven't had any complaints thus far. We have a really, really small institution, so we don't probably meet the same numbers as everyone else on the panel has from much larger institutions. That being said, we do have a expert in accessibility in the libraries, and I know that she would say that we're not probably up to par in every aspect that we need to be. That being said, if anyone has any ideas, I'm always looking forward to ways to improve it. But I do think a really big thing is the screen readers in our community, and accommodating those with the PDFs of scripts, as well as like you could implement subtitles as well and everything. But again, those only address certain issues. So always looking forward to improving, but I haven't gotten complaints thus far.
Thank you. So, question for Jasmine from Twitter. What are you looking for when you compare files to ArtStore?
So when I'm looking on ArtStore, I'm looking for color quality mainly, because the scans that I have are pretty, most of them are pretty old. The scan itself is not very good, but also the slide itself. I don't know if you've ever scanned slides or used slides before, but they lose their coloring after a while, and sometimes just the original film that was shot doesn't capture the color correctly. So the main thing I'm looking for is the size of the image. So if there's a higher quality image on ArtStore that has kind of a better ability to zoom in and look at smaller details, then I'm gonna toss the Dido image and keep the ArtStore image. But mostly what my graduate student's doing right now, and what I've kind of instructed her to do, and she's doing wonderful at it, is looking for discrepancies in color. So what she'll do is she'll have the Dido image on one side of the screen and the ArtStore image on the other side. And once you have them compared side by side, it becomes really obvious which one is a better image. So she's been kind of zooming through the obvious, like Picassos and the Renoirs, and so the big name ones that ArtStore probably will have a better image of. So.
Cool, thank you. So a question just came up for Sarah. So you mentioned using Facebook to interact with your users. Have you used other types of social media, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, etc.? And are there some that you favor over others, and why?
Yes, we have 4 social media accounts right now. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram, and I would say that Facebook is probably the primary place that we interact with our audience, and that's been the most successful so far. I think that there's some good potential for Twitter as well. Instagram, we're a little bit late to the party. We're just now getting on board, and nobody on our staff really has personal expertise with it, so it's something we're having to read about and experiment with. We're actually doing a campaign right now with an exhibit on Instagram instead of Facebook. So we thought we'd try that. And so we're trying to connect with the local community with the hashtags that they use here. And then Pinterest has been really good. We've had that since the same time that I started the Facebook and Twitter. And that's much more collections focused. We pin things like our digital exhibits there, as well as when we have an exhibit of physical books or when we have new books come in, we pin the books. That's something I learned from Netta Ahmed at ARLIS. But I think there's a little bit of potential there for interactivity. You can do collaborative pinning on boards, but I haven't really come up with a stunning idea of how to use that yet.
Thank you. So, question for Larice. Can you talk a little bit about how you mentioned you are a visual artist yourself and how this has informed your approach to librarianship?
Yes. I've never actually thought about it separate from anything else that I do. I see my art practice as informing the way I live my life, and that, I guess, in turn informs the way that I do whatever the work is that I'm doing. But as I've matured, I've learned that making is actually, I wouldn't say it's as I've matured. I'd say as our culture has come to embrace the idea of making, there are a lot more opportunities to talk about weird things that people used to look at me and just sort of nod and say, that's nice. And now people are actually embracing these different ways of thinking about things. So I tend to approach things from different angles. I like to experiment. I see the way you work in a studio and experimenting, and that the work itself is part of the learning process as a way to approach librarianship. Instead of a finite set of rules, I like to have tools that I can play with to kind of see what the outcomes are. And obviously you build in things like assessment, and you pay attention to your community, and you do all the things that you're supposed to do to not just do crazy things that don't have any impact or have any place in the institution or the community that you're working with. But I think that as a librarian and working in a library, you have a chance to push the envelope of whatever it is you're doing, and people tend to understand less about the work of librarians, especially students. And so I see that as a great opportunity, especially when I'm talking to students about pretty much any subject, to help them think more creatively, to use design thinking, which is a term or a phrase that had been popular for a while, in the approach to answering basic questions, that keywords and doing research projects are similar to starting a book or a painting or something like that.
Awesome, thank you. So we have another question for Jessie. Are any of your DLOs associated with the ACRL framework for information literacy or any other standards? And if not, are there any plans to address this with the DLOs?
I mean, everything we do in terms of pedagogy is informed by the ACRL framework. So I'd say yes. I guess I'm not understanding the question, because we definitely use that framework as grounds for all of the work we do.
That was actually Sarah's question. Sarah, do you want to clarify anything about that?
Nope, you answered it. Everything you do is grounded in the framework. Sounds good to me.
Awesome.
Ashley, you're muted.
Sorry. Question for Jasmine. Is there any guarantee from ArtStore that the images, which are duplicates of what's already on your visual resources collection, will continue to exist on ArtStore in the future?
Will the duplicates stay on ArtStore? Is that the question?
I think so. Any guarantee from ArtStore? The images?
The way ArtStore works is they don't police content at all. So if you go in and search ArtStore for something really famous, the Mona Lisa, for example, you'll get 10 different versions of the Mona Lisa up, all different kind of sizes, all different color, I don't know how to describe that, color variations, I guess. Just because different institutions will contribute their collections to ArtStore, and then depending on the level of access that they give to their collections, you'll search the digital library and they'll all come up. So they'll be scanned from slides, from photographs, from digital photographs. So you have a variety of materials on there. So they don't police anything, and they won't take down duplicates, which is why it's really important for me, at least, from a professional standpoint, when I put my professional hat on, to kind of weed out the bad images so that people don't use those instead of good images. So I want people to use high quality, color corrected, or an image that was taken with a digital camera with a pretty good lens and pretty correct color over the Dido images, because they're not as useful as I'd like them to be. They're not useful really as images by themselves. I think they're more. I think the use will come from them as a collection as a whole, to study maybe art history pedagogy, or as kind of a historical image collection. If it's too soon to say that 1995 is a historical image collection, but I think a lot of it will be useful just because of that kind of historical value. So no, there's no guarantee from ArtStore about anything really. And it's all able to change, and we can take down whatever we want, but they won't make us. So.
Thanks, Jasmine. So another question for Lori. This comes from someone who worked as an assistant for an artist who made books through laborious hand sewing. And they're curious as to how the emerging collection has been received by the users. Is a different set of language being applied to these objects? And if so, does that inform your collection practice?
I was just typing an answer to that. I'm not sure what the different set of language is, but so maybe Elizabeth can clarify that while I answer the rest of it. So the collection is well received. It actually gets, it's small, like I said, and people know the highlights that are in there, so they've been using it. And as I've been purchasing things, I've actually been purchasing sort of across disciplines. So I work with other liaison librarians and I say, I found this great book. It's related to music, if you want to pick a subject. Would people in your community find this useful? And then it's not just me sort of marketing this material, but it's also being marketed by a librarian that's working with musicians and music faculty who might find it of use. What I plan to do in the coming semester is a detailed audit of the collection that we have and develop a comprehensive sort of marketing plan for it. I think the videos are going to help with that, and also pushing that out in social media to piggyback on what we were talking about earlier. That's going to help market it as well, but our community tends to be pretty responsive to new things, and we have a pretty open way of sharing things through marketing and social media and the library website, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty well received. I don't think I answered the question about language. I don't think the language is different in terms of how they're cataloged. But again, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by language, so sorry.
Maybe, so pretty soon we're going to open this up for open chat. So maybe at that point you guys can hash that out a bit more. I do want to throw out one final question, and this was addressed to all the panelists, so I think this will be a nice note to end on. Basically, if I want to work in art libraries or archives, do I need an art history background? What are your thoughts, panelists? Just chime in, whoever wants to.
I would hope not. I'm a real big proponent of learning. If you read enough, you will know. So I would like to support you and say you don't necessarily need one, but obviously I think it helps a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think it also helps to be really interested and curious, and it just depends what your background is. There are people that don't have advanced degrees but have experience, or are artists and have a different set of or base of knowledge, and I think it just depends on the institution and the library, really.
I'm just curious, Jesse, when you say it helps, is that in terms of doing the actual work or getting the job?
Getting the job. I just feel like I had such a hard time getting a library job after library school that I just know the struggle, man. So I just want to say, your resume just counts for so much, even people getting people to talk to you. So unfortunately.
Yeah, if you're maybe not able to pursue some kind of major as an undergrad, or go to grad school or take classes outside of like audit classes, even just doing an internship in a museum or a gallery, managing data, or doing some kind of reference type work, that could be really valuable. So if you can't pursue something with a degree, what Larry said, always being curious and being involved, but get something on your resume that shows your interest, some expertise in art.
Yeah, there are a ton of MOOCs out there right now.
Yeah, Khan Academy is a big one. The Smart History program on Khan Academy is excellent. And I do want to note that a lot of times job postings will say subject knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
In art or art history or fine arts or photography or whatever the job entails, and that doesn't always mean a higher degree. It might mean you minored in it in your BA, or you took a couple art history classes and you really kind of took off from there. And so a subject specialty and a subject interest doesn't necessarily have to equate higher education. It could, like you guys were saying, be just a really strong interest in it.
All right, thanks, guys. I lied. I have one more quick question. And it's a very simple yes or no. Are any of the presenters attending the conference in Seattle, the joint ARLIS BRA conference in March?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Everyone's attending?
I'm not.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'll also be attending, so I will see you guys there, and hopefully a lot of our audience members as well. So that concludes What's Up with Art Librarianship. I want to thank our panelists so much. Let's give them a virtual, physical round of applause. You guys did a good job. It was really great learning about what you're up to. And
thank you.
Oh, yes, of course. And as I said, you guys have until 9 p.m. to linger and chat if you want to talk a little bit more about some of the questions that have been addressed, or address anything else to our panelists. So we're all going to turn off our video and audio, and this has become a chat-based experience. So thank you all so much, and have a good night.